what we are going to study is how addressing the psychological precursors of MS will resolve the symptoms of MS. To do that, there's actually several parts that we're going to work through. The first part is the initial symptoms. When someone has those initial symptoms of MS, which are usually numbing, paralysis, pain, weakness, or double vision, this is only an indication of a problem. It is not the problem we're going to focus on. Let me repeat that. We're not focusing on symptoms, because for us, the symptoms are only indicating that the body biologically responded to adversity. So the first thing we're going to do is look at what was that adversity prior to the first symptom. In hypnosis, we call it the sensitizing event. That is an intense, unexpected, and isolated event where we felt unable to respond. That is the definition of stress, not having the resources to respond to an event. When that happens, our body biologically responds in order to keep us safe. Apart from elevated blood pressure and all the other things that stress research has found, we can also respond by the symptoms of MS. We know additionally that it is not the sensitizing event that is the problem here. And most research on stress and MS only focus on the number of these stressful events. It is why are we feeling unresourceful? And that is caused by our limiting beliefs and coping behaviors, whose origins is usually in adverse childhood experiences, or at least experiences prior to this event. What I have found is the most effective way to address the origins, change the beliefs at the origin, even find that origin, is hypnosis, regression therapy. Regression therapy can help us travel back to the first time a belief was created. And if we can go to that and make changes there, the belief no longer holds as it did before. And then regression therapy then goes to the current sensitizing event, and we can completely transform the perception, that is, the feelings of stress regarding that event of today. If this was all we had to do, yes, I could do this in about 8 to 12 sessions, and it would be very effective, and symptoms would go away. How do I know this? Because if I have a client who's not been diagnosed with MS, this is all I take to change this same symptoms and same beliefs and behaviors of my clients that have been diagnosed with MS. And that leads us to part 2, diagnosis. When you are diagnosed and told that you have MS, you're also told that there is no known cause, that there is no known cure, that drugs might slow down the progression, that there's nothing you can do when you ask them, what else can I do other than the drugs? And you're also told that you might end up in a wheelchair in 10 years. This creates a second sensitizing event because it is intense, it is unexpected, and it is very isolating. And thus, once again, the diagnosis itself can intensify the symptoms and create new symptoms. And now we have new beliefs we have to deal with. Beliefs that you're unhealthy, that you're unhealable, and that you will end up in a wheelchair. The way that I have found most effective to address this second part is the array of NLP PTSD processes. They have shown to be extremely effective in reducing the triggers of PTSD, and they've also been effective in destroying the decisions and beliefs created by these kind of events. I want to emphasize, this is why I use NLP. This is why I use hypnosis. I'm not showing that hypnosis and NLP is effective for MS. I'm showing they are effective for the changes we need to create in the psychological processes. So what usually happens is after the diagnosis, people with MS tend to be either they ignore the diagnosis and after a while symptoms tend to fade, or they go away completely, or people take action and they do change their diets and lifestyle, etc., and that also causes changes in the symptoms. So things are getting back in control. But what happens is the third thing we need to address. They get a flu or pneumonia, or they break their ankle or have some other stressor, and symptoms intensify or new symptoms come in. And when that happens, we have a third sensitizing event, and that is mental. All of a sudden, it's intense, it's unexpected, it's isolating, and it's, oh my God, the symptoms are back. The doctor was correct. I'm going to end up in a wheelchair. And then the beliefs that were created with the diagnosis intensify, and we create a serious phobia, a fear of symptoms, of the disease, and of the body. The way that I have found to eliminate this association, to collapse this association, symptoms equals I'm getting worse, is the NOP collapse, the allergy process. So, summarizing, the treatment we are proposing is a mind-based therapy to resolve the psychological precursors of the disease. And we are going to focus on changing the original limiting core beliefs, those stress perceptions that usually come from childhood. We are going to transform that event that caused that strong biological reaction in the body, because we need to make sure that it's not going to get re-triggered by the same person, by a similar event, etc. We are going to transform that second sensitizing event, the being diagnosed by authority figure when you are in a heightened state, which is actually hypnosis, being told you have a debilitating progressive disease and there's nothing you can do about it. And thirdly, we need to change that intensification of the belief of diagnosis, which is now correlated to anytime you feel a symptom, anytime you're not having a good day, etc. Currently, to do this, I have, at least 18 sessions. Working with IES, for example, is standard 10 to 12 sessions. It's just asking for a little bit more. But I know that once we've done this and we've shown significant reduction in symptoms and recovery of function, the next phase of the study, it will actually be easier and faster. If you guys remember the 4-minute mile, initially scientists, doctors, biologists all said it was impossible to run a 4-minute mile. You would die in the process. When Roger Bannister ran his first 4-minute mile, and he did it, and once he finished 3 minutes, 59 seconds and a few milliseconds, he fell onto the ground and he was sure he was dead, because that's what everyone told him, right? But since him, the 4-minute mile has now become a requirement for competitive athletes. Just as the 4-minute mile, the belief that it's not possible has been broken, what we want to do with this study is break the belief that MS is progressive and incurable. And once we've done that, we will actually find that in the next stage of research, it'll be much easier to resolve MS. An example that's already out there is Dr. Sarno's work and lower back pain. He was able to establish that lower back pain is actually an issue of muscle tension, not an issue of the spinal cord abnormalities. He was able to prove that those are normal abnormalities and it has nothing to do with the back pain, that the back pain is actually associated with psychological precursors that create that muscle tension, and he has shown that by addressing the psychological precursors, which are, in this case, emotional repression, that in the majority of cases you actually release the tension. What his conclusion has been that usually by just knowing that and looking at those emotions are enough to release that muscle tension, though occasionally psychological therapy is also needed. That's where I want us to end up. So Dr. Sarno has said in his work, your muscles tensing in response to psychological precursors. If you think about MS, the majority of symptoms experienced by people with MS are muscular, numbing, paralysis, tingling, spasticities. And what we want to indicate is that the majority of those are caused by psychological precursors.